What's up, guys? Welcome to the Sophie bi-weekly podcast. I know I am late. This should have gone live yesterday, but welcome. I'm Ivan Amkasa, and today I have a really interesting topic. But before I do that, I'll some little housekeeping. And first is to hype for an event. I'll be speaking on behalf of Sophie Bot at the TEDx conference. No, it's a TEDx Buruburu. That'll be a TEDx Buruburu on the 16th of September. So y'all should show up if you're in Nairobi. And that was it. And secondly is, yes, we're raising 100,000 to make Sophie Bot better for you guys. And as of last week, we got to 80k USD. Yes, that's a good figure. And straight on to what I'm about to talk about today. And it's a really interesting topic. So I was 2 weeks ago. Yes, it was exactly 2 weeks ago. I was going over my Facebook feed and I looked at a really interesting story. So what happened is there's a curious story right deep down in the Dominican Republic, and if I got that right, it's the Dominican Republic. And the story is children are being born, young children are being born, really young children are being born, and they're being born as girls. But suddenly when they turn 12, they grow penises, which is really interesting. Like in a village somewhere in a village somewhere deep in the Dominican Republic, girls are being born, but when they turn 12, suddenly they grow penises. And that got me thinking, what do we exactly know about gender? Do we know there's a difference between gender and sexuality and sexual orientation and the works? And that's the inspiration for today's podcast. We're going to talk about gender and sexuality, and I've been reading up heavily about it. And there are 4 different things that I'll talk about. First is gender identity. The second would be gender expression. The third would be biological sex, and the last will be sexual orientation. This isn't a topic Kenyans, especially guys this side of the world, comfortably talk about. This is not a topic like you can easily raise up during dinner or over breakfast, because okay, I'm looking at feedback. So yes, it's not an easy topic. It's not a topic that you can easily raise up over a conversation, and that's what I want to tackle today. And it involved me taking a lot of reading, and to my surprise, I started off my quest for knowledge in an assertion I had from a friend of mine, that the whole mentality and the idea between the LGBTQ movement is that gender is a social construct, that how we interpret gender, or how we understand gender, is how defined by how we are raised and we grow. If you're born a guy, or if you're born with a penis, you're raised up to be a boy. The society shows you that there are certain manly things that you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be the man. You're supposed to be a man of the house. And it's really interesting. And if you're a girl, if you're born with a vagina, you wear dresses, pink is your color, and the like. That was the idea between that broad abstract term that gender is a social contract. And then it got me reading deeper onto the subject, and I discovered a lot of really cool insights that I want to share with you guys tonight. Let me begin by asking you to share, if you're listening to this right now, and if you know the guys who would be interested to join the conversation, share this conversation with them. And as I'm talking through the entire podcast, I'm open to question. I can take any questions right now. Somebody called by the username Nexus is asking me, this is the best I could do. So it's a live podcast, it's live, it's raw, it's visceral, so it's right in the moment, and that's what you're aiming for this. So back to a discussion on gender. And I mentioned 4 things: gender identity, gender expression, biological sex, and then sexual orientation. Gender identity is how you in your head think about yourself, the chemistry that composes you, either on hormonal levels, and how you specifically interpret about what that means. Gender, it's from all my research, is that it's introspective, as opposed to what we've learned in high school or we've learned throughout school. We learned that there are only 2 specific genders, male or female, and that is predetermined by your biological sex. 2 different things: gender identity and biological sex. That if you're born with a penis, your gender is man. If you're born with a vagina, your gender is woman. But that thinking does not fully encompasses the state of the entire human being. That your biological sex directly determines your gender is a flawed logic. And as research and as people are going, as social scientists are delving deeper into the subject, the more insights we get, because we've forgotten of a really gray spot between the gender identity, between what we express as gender identity as man and what we express as gender identity as woman. And I'd like us to have an open mind that is not directly determined by biological sex, as at least as far as we know in the 21st century, as far as we know, 2016, that biological sex does not affect our gender identity. And if it did, there wouldn't be this gray area. There's a gray area that the guys are terming as the intersex, that we've given like really bad names and a really bad precedents. Heard of a child born with both sexual organs, both male and female. Looking at the story that I was reading from the Dominican Republic, girls are being born, but when they turn 12, they grow penises. It shows that our entire view of gender needs an, that we need to study more on the subject and need to be open. And I've given you a broad stroke on the first. It's how you identify yourself, how you interpret the chemistry that's going over, how they interpret the chemistry in your mind. How you visualize yourself, how your perspective of yourself. So it's purely subjective, and it's how you visualize yourself. And it leads to the next thing, gender expression. Gender expression is how you demonstrate your gender based on your traditional gender roles or through the ways you act, dress, behave, and interact. So we move to the identities, where you as a human being, what you in your head think about yourself as in terms of your gender. Are you a man? Are you a woman? There's a gray line. Are you gender queer? Are you fluid? And it's a conversation that us as Kenyans aren't willing to talk about, but that's why the Sophie podcast is here. But then move along from that to now the gender expression. There's either masculine and feminine. It's not a broad spectrum, but I'd like us to think of 3 skills, that every person has 3 skills, and how they express and how it goes to their gender expression. That every person shows a certain level of femininity, every person shows a certain level of masculinity, and that is the expression. And problem and how we've taught to understand gender is, if your gender identity is man as prescribed by biological sex, is on your scale of on your gender expression of masculinity, your masculine scale is slightly higher than what your feminine, what's on the scale of your femininity, or what you portray as femininity. That's really interesting. But then there's another constituency that you're forgetting, that the people who who, when they express the gender identity, they do not fall on both subjects. There's another skill that weighs heavier than just strongly masculine or strongly feminine, and that's the androgynous group. And most people are confused by people who express themselves in this way. I had a namesake once in high school, and people couldn't. What the exact term is, place her or him, and because on her scale, how she expressed herself, how she expressed her gender was more heavy on the androgynous side than anything else. There's a TED talk that I've been looking at. There's a TED talk I've been looking at. It's by Daniel McClelland, and she's a perfect example on gender on gender expression. She walks on stage, short hair, cropped hair, in a six-piece manly suit, and before she opens her mouth, you think it's a guy, and then she says hi, and that's where the entire crowd gets confused. And it perfectly displays what I'm trying to do. As on gender expression is on by her dress, by her haircut, it's high on the masculine level, but then once the moment she opens her mouth, on her scale of femininity, she expresses strongly on femininity, and that's a new angle you need to look at. That first, gender identity is how you think about yourself, and gender expression is how you express what you think about your gender, what you feel about your gender. And it's not binary, it's not male or female, or it's not feminine or masculine. It's an element of both, and there's a really gray area that we are prone as Africans to stigmatize and not understand, uh, and it's not healthy. It's not healthy in this 21st century. Next, on to my next point is biological sex. What I'm talking about from the beginning, because the mistake we've been doing since we were born is we infer gender expression and gender identity directly from biological sex, and as time has proven, it's not it's not it's not it's not that set, it's not that fixed. There are a lot of gender identities that we need to recognize, and there are a lot of different configurations on gender expression that you also need to consider. And yeah, a friend of mine just texted. I hope this is a question. If it's not, yeah, that's not a question. Basically asking me if I published a game up on Facebook. So yeah, help me tell him I'm live. So yeah, so the next thing, something we also have a problem with, because the first two things, gender identity and gender expressions, we have all learned that it's purely the biological sex. If you're born with a penis, your gender identity is man. If you're born with a vagina, gender identity is women. But on the biological sex, it's also a crazy spectrum. It's also female, male, and then there's the intersex. Biological sex refers to the objectively measurable organs, hormones, and chromosomes. Interesting. So biological sex refers to the objective measurable organs, hormones, and chromosomes. Female is equal to vagina, ovaries, the X chromosomes. Male is equals to a penis, testicles, and the XY chromosomes. Intersex is the combination of the two. Now, an example of an intersex is what we grossly named as the hermaphrodite. This is a human being who exhibits both male and female organs. That's an intersex. So it's not binary. It's not binary at all. I've been listening to a podcast where there's a man who exhibits both sexual organs. But for sexual pleasure, the penis does not just do it for him, and he had to learn that, oh, by the for how that sexual organ was not for him in terms of sexual pleasure. And the mistake we make is, for most parents out there, if they have a child born, an intersex child born, a child exhibiting both sexual organs, or in other cases both sexual chromosomes. Problem is, the parent may do the rash decision and make a choice, decide the gender of the. Once again, gender is different from biological sex. Terminate one biological sex from the child at that stage, and it's a gross mistake, because us as a community, as a society, have been grossly ill-informed. And there's also been a fuss about a parent who had, like, on signing the birth certificate, they would not assign a gender to their child until they choose it themselves. It's a bit extreme, but then it shows us where we should be looking at along the lines of openness and enlightenment. We should be looking at that first. Thanks a lot, Bitange. That first, the biological sex does not determine your gender, your gender identity. It's not rule. Sometimes for most people, for other people, it does not at first determine clearly what your gender identity is, and secondly, does not also infer how you should express that gender. Are we good? So biological sex, it's once we've learned it's not binary. As once again, I'll go back to this. So this is something that happens in real time. In one specific village in the Dominican Republic, young girls are growing. Young girls are being born, growing up, expressing themselves as girls, identifying themselves as girls. But then once they turn 12, they develop a penis, and all of a sudden they're boys. And goes back to the parents who chose not to infer gender identity and gender expression to their child at this point, right? Because how do you then transition from this expression of this gender identity of man, a boy, I'm supposed to do XYZ, to now or a woman, I'm supposed to do XYZ, or I'm a girl, supposed to do XYZ, and all of a sudden you grow up penis and you're like, oh yeah, now I have to now turn to be a man. So it needs a level sense of openness. And remember, guys, I take questions as they come in. So far I've talked about gender identity, gender expression, biological sex, what we are most commonly inferring as gender identity and gender expression from the top, and as time goes on, it's proving wrong. And I'd add a rider to this point, is that we need to be open to everyone out there, everyone who expresses their gender in the way they like, in the way they like. In the way they like. So at this point, I'll take a break and shout out to Alfred. So he went to Trap Camp. It's an entrepreneurial program, and they did something special for him. Developed a graphic from the Time magazine and put his face on there, and people all of a sudden believe it's him who's on the cover of Time. We are praying for you. That's we are praying for you. Soon you'll be on the cover of Times, and that's awesome. So back to the main topic, because now we understand that it's not binary. Biological sex is not binary, male or female. There's a really gray area that we need to consider. And the story of this village, the kids in this village in the Dominican Republic, proves that. But then also, that biological sex does not infer a gender identity on someone. It's not specifically she should not infer gender identity on someone because of the biological sex. And thirdly is because it does not also infer a specific gender identity on someone, we should not expect a specific type of gender expression from that someone or someone else. So if something does not go along what we expect or what we have been taught since childhood, we should be open and continue these conversations from there on. I had a friend of mine with pretty strong feelings about pretty strong feelings about the subject, but I hope it's starting to get clear. And because it's a really I say awkward and telling subject, I'll take questions in the second, because I've saved the last for least. It's a topic of immense conversation. It's a moment of intense conversation. Last time Obama was here, our president defined it as defined it as a non-issue, but in this day and age, it is an issue. It is an issue. I need to take another sidebar, but no. So I'll take a second, invite any questions if any of you guys have. Once again, recap. Biological sex does not infer gender identity, and from there on should not infer gender expression or sexual expression, gender expression. The last is, it's a subject that cannot be separated from this one topic, but it's a core topic, it's a core issue, and that is sexuality. Yes. So on the two opposite spectrums is what we understand. It's not even two opposites. We only understand one spectrum. The heterosexual couple, the heterosexual sexual orientation. And I'll basically read out, and I'd like us to understand that sexual orientation is who you physically, spiritually, and are emotionally attracted to, based on their gender relation to your own. And remember, once again, I told you, gender identity. It's on this. It's all based on that person's perception of, not even perception, that person's understanding of who they are and understanding of their chemistry, hormones, and all. But sexual orientation is who you as an individual, who you identify as, and who you physically, spiritually, and emotionally are attracted to. And for so long, the conversation has been on the heterosexual couple. It's sad that we cannot consider any other option than that. But as we've learned, the same way as gender identity has a gray area that we don't consider about, and the same way how gender expression has its own configuration on how a person expresses their gender identity, and second, on how biological sex does not indefinitely determine their gender identity and gender expression. But when it comes to sexual orientation, we only lean to the left, sexual orientation. So heterosexual couples is a person who identifies themselves as strictly as a man or as a woman, is attracted to the opposite end of the gender identity, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, and that is own. Then we go to the bi area. Let me go to the extreme left that has been vilified and misunderstood for so long, and that's the homosexual, where somebody who identifies their gender as male is attracted to that same gender identity, and on the other end, somebody whose gender identity is woman or female attracts to their own gender identity. But then there's another area where people go for both. They are both spiritually, physically, and emotionally attracted to people in their own gender identity, and also mates in the other gender identity. And where I sit, there is no cause for alarm or vilification, because so many times we hide behind morals, and it's not, and it's fake moralism. Yeah, we hide it in behind morals, we hide behind social culture. It's not, in the African context, it's not allowed to be any other to be of any other sexual orientation aside from heterosexual. But it's 2016. We have to be open, and and proof has shown throughout history that all sexual orientations were acceptable in the most civilized of societies. The Roman culture, which we heavily borrow from, we borrow our politics from the Roman culture, we borrow education from the Roman culture. They were open about the sexual orientation. We look at so what's the point of this and discussion? First is who biologically does not identify, who's not biologically does not identify to this binary male or female sex. And once we've understood about the biological sex does not directly infer your gender identity. To some people, yes, it does. It does not infer the gender identity. And the second is, from their gender identity, that's where you get the gender expression. So we should not be freaked out if somebody expresses themselves differently than we express ourselves differently as compared to our biological sex. And I think that's all for tonight. And it's been great. It's been hard for me, but then I know it's even hard for you guys. But the biggest takeout from this from this session is, go out there, keep having these conversations. Do not fear. Do not vilify anyone who does not conform to our own understanding of gender and gender identity, gender expression, biological sex, and sexual orientation. Parents out there who have children born with children with an intersex, with an intersex biological configuration, do not vilify them. Do not be ashamed. In this day and age, you understand it. And to hype this episode, I had shared a photo explaining all this. It's a dumbed down photo explaining all this. That was procured from, it's pronounced metrosexual.com. You should check that out. The writer is called, and I've forgotten my link, but then remember, it's pronounced metrosexual.com. That's where resource. My resource for tonight was Sam Kilman, and I was led to him obviously from the One-to-One organization. So that's all for tonight, guys. Have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful weekend. Remember, I'll be speaking at TEDx Buruburu on the 16th of September. I'll remember you in a subsequent podcast, and let me know what you feel. If you have any questions, remember to ask me in real time. I'll take them and I'll answer you. And with that, I'm out. Have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful week. And cues the exit music. Good night.